Hello and welcome to the Empowered Couples Podcast, where here you get modern, non-boring relationship advice for you and your partner to communicate like pros, fight smarter, and stay on the same team no matter the challenge that you face. I am one of your hosts, Aaron Freeman.
And I'm Jocelyn Freeman, but you all just know us as the Freemans.
And this episode is 4 non-negotiables for a fulfilling and lasting marriage.
And both of those things matter, right? You don't just want a relationship or a marriage to last. Of course, that is one measure of success. You also want to be fulfilled and happy and healthy within that partnership, which is what we are going to cover today.
And when we thought about this topic, it was great because last week, if you've been following along, we talked about the steps to rebuild a marriage and coming up with, meaning being able to express and agree on your non-negotiables with one another, is a key element to rebuilding. Mm-hmm. And we want to take this further because not only does this help rebuild a marriage, but it is a key element to exactly what you're saying, a fulfilling and lasting marriage.
Yeah.
Now, this part, if you did listen last week, it comes after declaring your commitment, expressing your fears, and saying what you need to be repaired to step into the new relationship that you're creating. So this step about the non-negotiables is really key to the changes in the patterns that you need to see happen.
Yeah.
Now, I say that because as we move into ideas like forgiveness, and this can be small things, it can be bigger, more significant things, but when you break it down, yeah, ideally we'd all like to be someone that you can just always forgive, and you can be that type of person. I think the practical side of forgiveness is 2 pieces. It is acknowledging the emotional impact, but it's also that I have trust that my partner is going to change the things that I've requested.
And
now,
that
I've requested
is
those. Yeah, exactly. And then there's a consistency in that.
Yeah.
And, well, okay, forgiveness is paramount. Having the trust is then paramount for the forgiveness. So non-negotiables, this is where we get to both of those things.
And I just want to say, I know non-negotiables can sound like a very strong, like almost corporate word, or, you know, something that would just be in a professional setting. But the thing is,
like a contract.
Yes, exactly, like a contract. But a marriage is a contract, right? Not only in a literal sense, but if you're going to create a life with someone, build a life, say, hey, let's merge finances, let's create other human beings and live for decades together, you better bet I'm going to have some non-negotiables for the kind of person that I want to do that with. So it's just practical. It just makes sense. Now, of course, there are many non-negotiables that we could go into because there's different areas of a relationship. We're going to go into 4 that we feel are the most critical for couples we're talking to right now and staying with this theme of like rebuilding your marriage, or if you're in like more of a remodel of it. Now, before we go into the first one, just in case anyone gets interrupted, you get a call, you got to go somewhere else, I want to make sure you know that we are hosting a live marriage web class this week. So we only do this once or twice a year where we're on live. Now, don't worry, your privacy is maintained. You can watch and listen. We are going to go deeper into the practical ways to improve your communication, de-escalate conflicts, and repair. Now, those are actually the 3 topics of our popular guides. And the reason we want to go deeper into these is because you have to master these. Communicating more proactively and not getting defensive takes practice. Being able to de-escalate conflicts, it takes focus and practice, and then being able to repair. So we're going to go deeper into that. You're going to be on live with us. We're going to get very real and relatable. So make sure you go to onlinecouplesworkshops.com to get registered. That link will also be in the show notes. You don't want to miss the live marriage web class with us.
So we'll dive into the first non-negotiable, and we're going to start with what I think is a pretty powerful one. It's individual responsibility. Now, responsibility, it's a huge point in, you know, we've been sharing how much, well, at least I listen to Jordan Peterson. I think his psychological philosophy, his view on marriage, it's his view on, well, let me just get straight to it. His view on the importance of responsibility, especially for a marriage, is very powerful. And we talk about responsibility within repair, that you need to be responsible. Not necessarily we're saying you're to blame, but you need to take responsibility outside of your intention that things you say or things you did or maybe you didn't do, because maybe you promised them, it had an impact on your partner. You don't get to invalidate that. You don't get to say it doesn't make sense or it's not right. It's that you take responsibility for the impact an intended or unintended impact had. And I think for you listening, you're probably familiar with us talking about responsibility from that perspective. So the impact. But there are other things to take responsibility for. So this non-negotiable includes taking responsibility for just your patterns. Maybe it's having an impact, maybe it's not. But you need to start to look, is the relationship that we are creating the future? Is the current way that I'm being? Is the person that I am, my current patterns of behavior, my preferences, are these serving really the person that I want to be, let alone serving you, my partner, let alone serving the marriage and the future that it's creating, or if you have kids, is it really serving my kids? And that's really where you have to start to understand that you can't be the same person if you want a different future. If you want the same future, the same future as your present, then stay the same person. Although we might argue that you probably would be more in a decline. But you have to really understand that this whole game is progress, and you have to become a different person if you want anything different. So there's also personal responsibility with, owning tasks associated with a shared life.
Whether that's home, finances, you don't need to be parented by your partner. You shouldn't be. You want to kill off intimacy and connection, then act in a way that your partner has to parent you. Not going to go well, right? You two should be team members, teammates, giving it 100%. And, just to really get kind of honest, like some of us, we need to grow up a little bit. Maybe the way you're living now, you're trying to live like you were 5 years ago. Like if you were trying to operate our life now, where we have a child, we have a toddler now, we have a business that's growing, we have a lot of responsibilities. If you tried to act the same way as when I met you, it wouldn't probably be going well because our life is different. And you have to be asking yourself, am I evolving to the degree that my life is growing and evolving? So we have to sometimes have an honest conversation with ourselves and say, do I have some work to do? Do I need to be a more responsible partner and be able to step up in the places that are going to support our marriage and our family? And that doesn't mean it has to be all work and no play. You can be responsible for happiness, for joy, for play. Like be responsible that when you come home from work or you come home from errands you have to run, that you bring joy into the house. And that you are connected. So we're not saying just be this stern person who's just getting tasks done and you're just working nonstop. No, slow down. Be responsible for connection and happiness within the home.
Yeah. Responsibility, like I think ownership is a good word. It's not necessarily like a burden. I think responsibility is a burden when you don't choose it. And maybe responsibility can empower you if you do choose it. But I think also, like you're saying, being responsible for having the experience that you want to have in your life. Either you can live like your outside circumstances dictate your experience, or the things that your partner is saying and some of their patterns. It's like, well, I can't do anything about my partner. You could still be responsible for your experience. For sure. So no matter what is happening outside of, in this conversation, like your own self, your own body, you can either give that power and feel like more of a victim of circumstance or your partner's actions, or be responsible that, hey, whatever is going on outside of our relationship, within our relationship, patterns from my partner, you know what? I'm responsible that I'm just going to draw a line right here, and I'm going to be responsible that from this moment on, it's going to be what I want it to be.
Exactly. Yes. And we have an upcoming episode where we're going to talk about leadership in marriage and how both of you can be even better leaders. So we'll save that. Getting to the second non-negotiable, it is you must strengthen your emotional intelligence, right? Intellectual intelligence is what school focuses on. But when it comes to relationships and the rest of your life thriving, it comes down to your emotional intelligence, which can mean many things. But to simplify it, it is your ability to not only recognize and handle your own feelings, but also to be able to support people in their emotion appropriately, right? So attunement is even another part of that, being attuned to what someone else is feeling and what do they need in that moment. But let's just backtrack, right? So emotional intelligence, first off, looks like being able to recognize, identify what you are feeling and be able to give language to it. This is something I know you speak to men a lot about this, because I feel like there's been several generations where men are just told to be strong and aren't as emotional. And so a lot of men struggle to actually express how they're feeling. And even on sessions recently, it takes some time for them to get down to go, actually, I'm feeling really overwhelmed and like I'm not doing good enough at work. And it takes a while for them to even get there, right? To be able to express how they are feeling, sharing those burdens. So male, female, being able to express how you feel, be able to label it, and then, of course, responsibly expressing it. It's not just because we are angry that we then get to lash out. Well, Aaron, I want you to know I am mad, so I'm going to make sure with my verbal cues and my physical cues, my hands and my volume, you know I'm mad. No, that's not how it works. That's how I used to operate, right? I thought that was the way to express emotion, was kind of to emit it and project it out to you. But no, to responsibly communicate our feelings in a way that it can be connecting and constructive. And we will go more into that in the web class as well.
Which is pretty much leading to the second subpoint here, is that you have to disconnect that triggered emotion or that fear that you have. And maybe it's a fear around intimacy. It could be financial security. It could be fear around being disrespected, feeling isolated, rejected. Whatever the fear is, you have to disconnect it. Doesn't mean you don't feel it. In a sense, you're accepting that I'm feeling this way, but you can't just let your behavior or your reaction just happen as a consequence of I feel this way. So emotional intelligence is about being with what you're feeling, accepting it, and to your other point, being able to identify and express it, but do that in a way that's not harmful or blaming your partner.
Yes. Another part, so we've been talking about ourselves, right? So the emotional intelligence of handling, recognizing what we're feeling, but this also plays into your partner. It's not getting offended that your partner is upset, right? Of course, it's not giving them an excuse for how they act. They are responsible for also how they handle emotion. But we find a lot of couples will take their partner's feelings personally, and then it becomes a whole thing. Instead of, okay, whether your partner is sad, upset, frustrated, overwhelmed, being able to hold space for them. I think a while back, I'd have to look at what episode number, but we talked about holding space, being able to just be there with someone, let them process the emotion, not take it personally, not have to fix it. Fixing it can sometimes trigger it even further. And then being able to be attuned to what do they need in this moment? Do they just want me to comfort them? Do they want to talk? Do they want feedback? And the best thing to do is ask them in that moment, how can I support you right now? So emotional intelligence is a non-negotiable for a fulfilling and lasting marriage. And if this is an area you need to grow and evolve, that's okay, because we all were raised differently and some of us were not shown how to handle emotions well. So that's the second non-negotiable. Let's hear the third one.
Yeah, the third non-negotiable is open and proactive communication every day and, every week.
Right.
Multiple times a week, let's say. So it's not just about communicating the life management tasks, because that a lot of times gets collapsed for couples. Like, our communication, we communicate well. Well, yeah, you talk about what needs to get done, but it doesn't mean that you're connected. And that's going to be the main theme that this non-negotiable leads to. Because, once again, even if some couples come to us and say, our communication is great, and it's like, well, rate your love account. It's like, 3. So, okay, so you're not really capturing what real open and proactive communication is or can be, because it should lead to connection. So what that would look like is, say, initiating more conversations. That might seem simple, but I wanted to add that it's also initiating in asking questions of your partner.
Meaningful questions.
Yeah, well, that's a good point. Yeah, not like, hey, how's your day?
Right.
What's for dinner? So more meaningful, maybe you say emotional. But yeah, let's just stick with meaningful conversations. So that's that part. And then being a good listener is a part of communication, so that your partner feels like they can share. They're heard, they're understood, they're not invalidated, you're paying attention. Yeah. So that leads to connection. But this has been an interesting one we've seen a few times the past couple of weeks is, well, I'll say for men, we need to do better in our open and proactive communication about volunteering, I'll say, our own experience without being prompted. Because we can even do a good job of listening. Like I can do a good job of listening to you. And so, yeah, over a few weeks' time, you'll feel like, oh, Aaron's doing a great job listening. But ultimately, you'll feel something like, well, I don't really know what's going on with him. Yeah. So you won't feel as connected. How could you? Because connection is knowing the internal world of another person. Yeah. So me being able to not just live life and like take things on myself, even though I think a part of being a male in a relationship is like taking on responsibility, things that we've already talked about. But it's not just doing that on your own, like focusing on it, getting it done. Because there's an aspect of that which is like, hey, I'm doing this for the family. Like I'm going ahead and I'm handling these things. I'm kind of doing it on my own. What doesn't really lead to connection. So being able to initiate conversation, again, not through question, but saying, hey, I really like to chat. Here's some of the things I've been experiencing and going through, and then allowing your partner to know more about you, as well as you'll feel more connection to be able to share and have your experience understood.
No matter what you do for quality time, you can't feel connected without great communication. And I know that seems obvious, but it's often those obvious things that we aren't focusing on. And so we actually had a couple travel into Arizona and spend 2 days with us doing in-person immersions and experiences. And we even bring in other facilitators. This is something clients have the option to do. And the reason I even bring that up is because connection was something that she was wanting to focus on and experience more of. And one of the gifts we gave them in their gift bag was these conversation starters. And just spending some time to ask each other more meaningful questions, especially if you've been together for many years and it feels like you've talked about all the things, it just creates a getting to know each other feeling again. Because when you're dating early on, it's exciting because you're discovering new things about each other. You're interested. And so as you spend more and more years together, you need to get more intentional at asking good questions for great conversation, which then leads to connection. Now, I don't want to leave communication, this point, this non-negotiable, just about connection, because yes, that's part of it. The other practical part of it, being able to live a life peacefully with less conflict, is that you communicate well about things that are needed to be done or responsibilities. And so being able to communicate well, yes, about some of those life management things. And so even in our family meeting guide, which we're huge on, that's a great way to communicate intentionally every week. One of the questions is about, what are upcoming priorities and plans for the week? You'd be surprised how many couples do not just take a few minutes to look ahead and say, what is on your plate? What is on mine? What do we have on the schedule? Making sure that you're on the same page and that you both have what you need, because maybe you've packed your schedule so full for this next week that there's going to be no time for you guys, no time for self-care, and then that's going to lead to issues. So I want to make sure that with this non-negotiable about communication, you see that this is the bridge to more connection, but also just more being a team and on the same page. And that's why the family meeting guide is a great tool for that as well. Taking us into the fourth non-negotiable.
This is further developing and paying attention to the traits of flexibility and resilience. So to really kick this off, it's basically about having a team mentality because you can talk about the schedule for the week, let's say, and if you feel like you laid out what's important to you and your activities and you only focus on that, then well, what about when things happen? What about when stresses come up? What about when things need to change? Yeah. It's like you have to have a level of flexibility. And I also think just flexibility from your own preferences and how you want the week to go to, hey, you're a part of a team. So you don't just get to focus by yourself. You don't get to have a Allen Iverson type of mentality. So
I don't know who that is, but some of you know.
Oh, I thought maybe you would at least. So just basketball analogy.
Okay.
Great basketball player, but just really focus on himself. There's like a famous-ish kind of quote where people were questioning him about going to practice. And he was like, practice? Like, what do I need to show up to practice for?
He wasn't being a team member.
Yeah, well, you didn't win any championships, so it's no surprise.
Ooh, okay.
So it really is that you're a team, and a part of the team is flexibility. And then maybe you could talk a little bit more about resilience. But you did say yes to this marriage. Like, I really want to get that in there. It's easy for us to think, well, we got this agreement. My partner wants to live life with me. And you can kind of default back to just thinking more about the self. So you said yes. Part of what you said yes to is that I'm going to be flexible. I'm going to understand the needs of my partner. I'm going to sometimes prioritize my partner's needs over my own and set aside your own preferences for basically the good of the marriage or the good of my partner. So it also comes down to maybe that phrase, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. So just really focusing on that team mentality, that the we is more than myself. And yeah, there's things that I'd like to go a certain way or I'd like to control, certainly around my schedule or my own downtime.
My preferences, the way I'd make decisions.
Yeah. And just, okay, are you being flexible around what's going to be the best path forward or what's going to be the best path forward for the marriage, not just for yourself?
So then speaking to the resilience, this is truly one of my favorite words for the last year and a half, because you guys know, at least if you've been listening a while, last year, 2022, was the hardest, the hardest year of our lives together for many reasons. You'd have to go back and listen to those episodes to hear more about that. But the point is, we took our resilience level to a whole other stratosphere. I really feel like the way we have handled adversity, challenges, hardships, you and I can overcome anything. Wow. And I just think that the true test of someone's character is not in the good times, on the good days. It is how you handle the hard ones. And this is where I really want to challenge all of you to up level. I feel like marriage as a whole needs boot camp. Maybe we need to literally start a boot camp. Actually, it's not even a workshop. It is a boot camp, because I feel like people sometimes have a weak mindset around marriage, and you need to be prepared to embrace hard days, hard week, not let it become a hard month by learning our repair process, right? Being able to interrupt things as they gain momentum. But we are going to go through challenging times, whether it's about your marriage or it's maybe something going on with a child or a family member, your finances. And you together need to be able to face that adversity and realize that it is trying to develop you. So this resilient mindset, in a practical sense, it affects how you handle conflict. Instead of shutting down for several days and not wanting to have a repair conversation, okay, step up and come back to the repair conversation. We put up a post today that was about how after an argument and you're being distant, you're being cold, and that could go on for days, you ask yourself, how much life and love am I willing to lose for this? And you lose out on life. How many days are you going to have that down energy and disconnected and cold? You feel kind of lifeless when you aren't repairing from conflict. And so ask yourself, how much life am I willing to lose to staying stubborn, not tackling the challenge? And look, maybe you disagree on a decision. There are times that we had to decide if we're going to do Santa Claus for Christmas. And of course, that didn't turn into a big thing for us. But in marriage, when you have kids, especially, you face a lot of decision points, and you're not going to agree 100% right off the bat. You're going to have to reconcile things and talk through and brainstorm. But be resilient. Face it. Face adversity. Become stronger. I feel like a motivational speaker right now.
Your arms are in the air.
Yeah, they are. I wish you guys could see me. I feel like I am doing these champion arms. Mm-hmm. But I believe in you guys. Be resilient.
I think just with that, just stop blaming your partner.
Boom.
It's like, honestly, I don't know. I don't care if, they said something the wrong way. They had a tone. They had an attitude. They had a bad day. It's like, and I'm really saying this for myself too. It's like, I think I can be a little bit more resilient. There's things that's like, I don't want to keep talking about like the coffee mug in the sink or,
he's upset how with me, you guys.
Now the dishwasher silverware gets all put in like one thing. Or just anything like a tone that I already mentioned. It's just, am I really going to get so offended by just everything that's not done perfectly? And I think you may have expressed that in a way. But resilience and responsibility. Oh, two more R's. I find that there are so many R's now as we go through this.
It's good.
For relationships.
Yeah.
So, you know what? I don't want to just say let it go or toughen up, because that sounds like a parent, to a child. But I think the analogy is like a 2 to 4 year old. Maybe we can expand that to a 6-year-old. Yeah, they can have hurt feelings and then they can just express it. And we don't necessarily expect them to handle that too well. But between emotional intelligence, responsibility, and resilience, I think it's time for a lot of us to grow up in maturity.
Yes.
And think more about the marriage, think more about the team mentality, think more about that the marriage is going to face challenges. We're each individually going to face stressors and challenges. And your choice is either just to stand up in front of it, not complain, accept it, don't pass blame, create the environment that you want, hold to your responsibilities, put your hand out to your partner, say, come on with me, I'm going to lead this team, and just not let so many things that really are very relatively small for the country that we live in.
Well, and people are all over the world listening to this podcast. So I feel like we are lucky if we have safety and we have our family right now. We are really lucky. And so you have the ability to then, with that safety, with that security, you can create a great life together and a great marriage. And so with that, there's many more non-negotiables we could go into, but we feel these are 4 of the most important ones in this season right now. And if you haven't listened to that episode from last week about steps to rebuild a marriage, listen to it. A lot of us are in a remodel stage, to use the home analogy. Some of us are in a complete demo and rebuild. And so review these non-negotiables together and then make sure you attend our live marriage web class this week. Again, go to onlinecouplesworkshops.com and sign up. We only do this once or twice a year, and make sure you have the guides on hand for that. But we are so grateful for you all. If you're new here, make sure you hit that subscribe button. And also, it means so much to us if you'd hit the 5 stars on the platform, give us a rating, because that really helps us reach more people. But we love you guys, and we will talk to you on the next episode.